All right, so let's get this started here. Go ahead and present. So I'm hoping this is actually going to be a fairly short PowerPoint presentation. The reason why this isn't a big unit that we cover anyway, as far as nerves go. It's the shortest of the 3 units I have, and we covered the bulk of it in the last presentation. This one, we just cover a couple of things. If we were actually in class, we would get pretty in depth on some of this stuff. Kids usually have a lot of questions on the material. All right, so we left off with this girl here. She's adorably cute. She had half of her brain removed. If you haven't watched that, you need to watch that. It's really good. I highly suggest it. Coming away from the brain, we're now going to focus on the spinal cord. And as you can see here, the spinal cord travels from the brainstem down through the body, through the spine, the spinal canal there. And you have, if you remember, your cervical enlargement and your lumbar enlargement right here. And there are pairs of nerves coming out of each one. There's 31 total pairs of nerves that are extending out of your spine. All right. And so you would have C1 through C8 would be 8 pairs of your cervical spine, or cervical nerves, I apologize. Then your thoracic would have 12 pair. Your lumbar nerves have actually 5 pair. And then your coccygeal nerves there, well, 5 pairs of the sacral. You can see them coming out right there. And then 1 pair of coccygeal nerves down there. All right. They total 31. And these nerves are required to innervate through the whole body and basically make you work. All right, so the spinal cord, this is an interesting thing. Your spinal cord actually ends between your first and second lumbar vertebrae. You can see it comes down here and it stops being a complete cord at this point. From this point on, it spreads out into its separate strands almost, all right? And those strands, this area here kind of looks like a horse's tail, and so they called it a cauda equina. All right, and so horse's tail, it's basically just the end of your spinal cord. Yeah, pretty easy. That will be on your test, by the way. But where each nerve comes out of the spinal cord, those points are called roots. All right. And those roots actually meet together again. So you can see you have a dorsal root coming out and then a ventral root. That means this is on the dorsal side or your back side. This is on your ventral side, which would mean towards the front or towards the stomach. So this is the interior of the body here. You have this thing right here called a ganglion. That is this big, I guess it's just a big ball. You can see it right there. That is actually where the body, the cell body of the neuron for these nerves sits. All right. So where you have a ganglion, you have the cell body of a nerve. And you can see this is a sensory nerve. So the signal would come this way into the spinal cord. The spinal cord would then use the ventral portion of this to send a motor response back in order to affect something based off of the sensory that it received. If you follow the spine down here, you can see where each one of the nerve roots emerges from the spine. You can see where the lumbar enlargement is, and then basically this, we haven't talked about the conus medullaris, we won't, but you can see how it turns into the cauda equina there between the L1 and L2, and down it goes. Pretty simple. Again, your roots here, you have it calls them the posterior side here. That's fine. I don't care. Dorsal, ventral, posterior, whatever. This is your ganglion. And then from this point, it's basically just one nerve, but you would have a sensory come in and then a motor return. All right. You can see that they are covered with dura mater. There is a subarachnoid space and there is arachnoid mater around them. A lot of the same stuff that you learned about as far as meninge goes earlier. P-mater, if you're looking for it, it is there. And you just have gray matter, white matter, everything you learned about in the brain as far as cell structure and membranes go, you still find in the spinal cord. Plexus is, which is the plural form of that. If you look, you have all of these roots coming out. And when they come out, they actually combine back together. And so you get these complex networks of nerve signals, and those are called plexus. And so you have one up here for the cervical. You have another one here, which goes down into the arms and chest area. And so if we were to look at it up close, the cervical plexus you can't see because the cervical ones are up here. But your brachial plexus, you can see the C4 through, and it's actually T1. They all emerge from the spinal cord, but then they combine back together into these large networks of nerve signals or nerve tissue, and these are what are called plexus. So there's all sorts of different types of plexus. If you looked back, you can see where there's all kinds of them happening. And so if we look at the lumbosacral plexus, you have your obturator nerve, your sciatic, which is that lower spine to the buttocks. This is actually the largest nerve. If you look at this plexus that comes down right here, it's a big, giant nerve. And then your femoral, which is your femur and your knee. So this one we know was going to go down to the knee. This one, lateral femoral. So yeah, it's all just these combined sets of nerves. They're single when they leave the spine, and then they combine together again to form plexus. This is the cervical plexus I was talking about earlier. It stays up here in the neck area, but you can see how interwoven all the nerves are after they emerge from the spine. So now we're going to move on to your fight or flight or resting nervous system. This is all autonomic. You have no control over either one of these. Now, what happens here is there are two systems here. They complement each other, but at the same time, they're kind of both vying for control over the body. One of them is trying to excite the organs of your body to get them to move faster, to get them to do more, while the other is trying to cause them to rest, to do less and not use as much energy. And so sympathetic would be high energy, emergency stuff. If your heart starts beating faster, it releases more hormones, causes the body to amp up from the blood moving around. Parasympathetic would say, hey, no, let's go back to normal. Let's calm ourselves down. Again, you have no control over this. These guys are antagonists. They both affect the same organs. They just equate to different reactions. So it's why when you do get excited, you're able to calm back down as far as metabolism and body using energy and all of those things. It's because these two systems are in check with each other. I highly suggest you watch this video. It explains sympathetic and parasympathetic very well. It is a crash course. If we were in class, we would be watching that. It's really good. Watch it. They explain some really cool stuff, and they explain it well. This is just another picture of the sympathetic and parasympathetic. So if you have your pupils that constrict with your parasympathetic, then your sympathetic would cause them to dilate. All right. If you have one that's causing you to cry, you'd have one that causes you to stop crying. So you have these two fighting. All right. And we'll just go from there. More images of your cranial nerves. Just wanted to kind of point out where they go. Your cranial nerves are what constitute the bulk of your test that's coming up. And so I've included some reminder pictures here at the end. What you can do, if we were actually in class, this would be the point where we would dissect a sheep brain. I'm considering recording myself doing that, but I think there's actually a bunch of different videos out there of people doing it. I don't know. I'll just see if I want to do it. But they've highlighted in red the different nerves. Our brains are not highlighted in red. Again, I would have made you color this sheep brain, but we're not in class. Now, if you want to test your skills, as you can see, you have some kind of Arabic writing here, correct? Well, go through and see if you can tell what each one of these nerves are. If you don't know one, you know you need to focus on it some more. And then when you click on the next slide, it tells you what they are. It's an easy way to help study location for nerves. All right, again, can't explain this enough. You need to know the locations. You need to know what they do. All right, that constitutes the end of this video. If you have any questions, go ahead and contact me. Let me know what you think or what you need help with, and we will go from there. Thanks, guys.